Groff and his wife, Christina, had developed a breathing discipline called holotropic breathwork to induce an expanded state of consciousness. In one breathwork session with Russians at California's Islam Institute, Mack recounted that he became a Russian father in the 16th century whose 4-year-old son was being decapitated by Mongol hordes.
Decapitated?
Yes. He owed a lot to the Groffs, Mack later said. They put a hole in my psyche and UFOs flew in.
Just a little disclaimer here. This subject might see the two of us travel vastly different paths. Don't worry. After the taping, we will get along, and Christian will remain correct. Yeah.
As always.
As never once in his life. We will jump into some stories in a minute. Yeah, Christian, you just opened a can of worms on yourself, man. Remember the ratio of episodes written. I can roast you to hell. There will be consequences for this, my good man.
For me always being correct, I just wanted to see if I could fit that in there.
Oh, yeah.
It's the least you could
read it off for you.
Yeah, you always get nuggets from me.
I do. Yeah. But I also, I'm the, judge, jury, and executioner on who saves these clips,
Yeah, I just, I don't always have to be correct, but it was funny to hear you actually read that.
I hope you enjoyed that, because it's never going to happen again.
Now there's some bullet points we can kind of go through. I can go through those really quickly if you want.
Mac bullets.
So we're talking about John Mack right now, just to give you an idea of who he was before we get into some abduction stories.
Sure.
And you can kind of use the perspective of who he was and how he came across these stories and how he handled them to kind of come to your own conclusion about what these stories are and what they mean to us. So in the 1980s, he interviewed many international political figures as part of his research into the causes of the Cold War. And with Carl Sagan's and Physicians for Responsibility, he promoted the elimination of nuclear weapons. Then in the early 90s, he started a 10-year psychological study of 200 men and women who reported alien encounter experiences.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, and a pretty long time too.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah, not your typical. At least not with this subject, not what you usually get from like a psychologist or,
yeah.
I think we've mentioned it here before, but a lot of people don't consider a psychologist necessarily a scientist, but he is a doctor. So you can argue away on that one if you want to. In a 1994 interview, Jeffrey Mislove stated that Mack seemed inclined to take these abduction reports at face value. Mack replied by saying, "Face value, I wouldn't say. I take them seriously. I don't have a way to account for them." So he doesn't sound like a true believer, but he sounds
like an actual scientist that wants to just take down a story, learn from that.
Yeah, and keep studying it.
Take the information.
Yeah. So that's a good thing in this situation, even if it's kind of an unorthodox view in academic circles, I think. And it still is.
Yeah. In
a 1996 interview with PBS, he stated, "There are aspects of this which I believe we are justified in taking quite literally. That is, UFOs are in fact observed, filmed on camera at the same time that people are having their abduction experiences. It's both literally, physically happening to a degree, and it's also some kind of a psychological, spiritual experience occurring and originating perhaps in another dimension." The BBC quoted Mack as saying, "I would never say, yes, there are aliens taking people, but I would say there is a compelling, powerful phenomenon here that I can't account for any other way. That's mysterious. Yet I can't know what it is, but it seems to me that it invites a deeper, further inquiry." So he still looks like he means to do this the correct way.
Yeah.
From Nile Boys in September of 2012 in The Lancet, Mack's former colleague and friend, Edward Kantzian, clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard, told me he was not crazy. He was a man that was guided by his interest, his searching for all kinds of truths, and I think he got caught up with the faulty instrument. The faulty instrument, hypnotic regression, was a technique that Mack put absolute faith in to help his patients recover memories more clearly than conscious recall. It was a view that put him at odds with the weight of evidence, as Professor Chris French of the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit of Goldsmiths College, London, told me. That is a weird research unit.
Goldsmiths College?
Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit.
Sounds like a dope unit to be a part of.
APRU for short.
Wouldn't that be like paranormal research?
Yeah.
Damn, how do I sign up for that shit? I need a doctorate or something.
Maybe, I guess so.
Damn. Well, that's not happening.
Yeah. The problem with hypnotic regression is you get pretty much what you expect to get. If you go into a session expecting to recover memories of alien abduction, that's most likely what you're going to get. If you go in thinking you're going to recover past life memories of being Mary Queen of Scots, then that's what you'll get. But as far as both the Harvard administration and the scientific community were concerned, the problem with Mack was not just his belief in his hypnosis, it was what he did with it.
So I think just because he was doing regressive memory therapy, they're like, oh, it's...
I think regressive memory therapy is really shady and not trustworthy. And there's just so many barriers to doing it right.
Would you say the same thing if it was children recounting a past life? Or is it just because it's people saying they've been abducted by aliens that you're like putting kind of this like, you know, weird spin on it and be like, yeah.
I would find it more fascinating to hear children say, and we talked about it on the show.
Fascinating's fine, but like,
I don't necessarily believe it's the truth, especially, and one of the things I think, and it's mentioned there in that last little bit, is that the person doing the regression tends to suggest or lead.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing.
And that's where it's tough.
That's where you get it. Are they leading these people into it, or is it them just talking and the person, like them being like, what do you see? And the person's like, I see a bright light, you know, like,
and that's where it's tough is to do it correctly. You not only have to do it without leading anybody.
Sure.
Which is hard to do because humans give off little cues that we can read and go in that direction based on just reading a certain facial tick.
But can I say that, like, I feel like you would be for it because you yourself say that memory is shit, right? Like it's such an untrustworthy thing, right? But maybe these things are embedded into our quote unquote DNA, or it's like the same where you have the, you know, stone tape theory. You can have that same thing on us. Like we have a hard drive almost to where when these instances happen, even if our brains forget it because that's what's best for us, somewhere in the archive is that footage, you know, like, so maybe you're pulling from that from like deep within, even though your brain wants to forget that.
I've come to believe that it doesn't work quite like that. Because once you pull this stuff out of there, you're going to interpret it with a modern view. You can't interpret it the same way you interpreted it when it happened. Even if you remember it perfectly, it's like you lose something in that time period and you can't really, because of the way our mind works and stores memories and retrieves them, it's just really hard to trust it, especially when you have somebody doing regression therapy that is easily to lead you.
Do we know, because we've established just reading about Mack as it is, that he was an honest man, right?
He was a good guy.
Yeah, like he genuinely wanted this research to be provable, or he wanted to make sure that he got the evidence so factually that it couldn't be mistaken as anything else.
Right.
And so do you think that someone with that personality would lead people into his answers because he knows that something like that would completely fuck up the entire experiment?
I think he knows that would mess up the entire experience, and maybe he got to the point where he's almost too close to it, too emotionally involved, like he's starting to believe.
But he's given us no evidence that his judgment was kind of like clouded. I
don't think it would be a conscious thing. It's just something that happens to us.
What if let's say he said what, 200 people, right?
Yes.
What if he did this so often, he heard these stories so often that there was corroborating events within these different stories to the point where maybe he's like, oh, holy shit, maybe this is actually happening. Like, is it possible that this dude did the actual research needed for this, discovered stuff, and then started to believe it, which is the exact process that you should do for something like that?
Well, you can tell he did because he mentioned that there were sightings in the areas that these abductions were taking place in. you.